Okay, cool. Okay, so hello everyone, welcome. For those of you who are new here, IterateUX is an open virtual Discord community that's focused on helping UXers learn, connect, and grow their career. We're an inclusive community where anyone related to or has an interest in UX can join. My name is Janie. I'm an event coordinator for IterateUX, and I'll be your host today. And we're here with Kim.
Hi, I'll be moderating today alongside Janie today.
Awesome. Okay, so we hold weekly events, which are virtual meetups like this one, where you can pop in and listen to our guest speakers share their journey, their takeaways, and their expertise. We do portfolio and resume reviews. Our live portfolio review sessions are organized by our team to help you receive valuable feedback. All you have to do is submit a ticket, and our senior UX professionals will be able to help you push your portfolio to the next level. We also hold design feedback, coffee chat sessions, design challenges, whiteboard challenges, and mock interviews for you to gain hands-on experience and apply your skills. We're a community that's really focused and here to help you land your first UX job. If you like what we do at IterateUX and are gaining value, please support us by sending a donation on Ko-Fi to keep our services going. IterateUX is a nonprofit organization, so every donation goes straight into the community and any amount is greatly appreciated. Upcoming, we have the IterateUX Design Challenge coming up. Be sure to sign up if you haven't already. It should be in your email, or you can reach out to any organizers for more information. The workshops for the Design Challenge will start on March 12th. Okay, and before we continue, we'll just do a quick 5-question, 2-minute poll to help us better serve you. So if you could share that, Kim. Okay, we'll give it like a few more seconds so everyone can finish.
Do you think we're all good?
Yep, I think.
All right, so I will.
Okay. Cool. All right, so our speaker today is Florian Boelter. Florian is a senior product designer with a background in product management. He originally transitioned from an academic background in literature, and his design career so far has been in startups ranging from very early stage ventures to Series B funded companies. He's also the founder of Open Doors, which we'll hear more about later. Before we begin, please unmute yourself when you need to share something and turn your video on too. We'd love to see your face. Leave your questions in the chat box. We'll be sure the speaker answers them later. We'll have a Q&A session at the end, but throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, leave them in the chat box. And make sure to join our Discord community if you haven't yet. We usually send out updates on there about future events. And as always, the recording will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. All right, without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Florian.
Hi, everyone. Really good to be here. So let me just share my screen real quick so you can see what I've prepared for you. Give me a second for that. Where is it? Here we go. Just making sure it's the right one out of these 1,000 windows I've opened. So now you should see something. Can you give me a sign real quick? There, all right, looks good. Okay, so yeah, as I said, my name is Florian. I'm based in Germany, and we are going to talk about the Junior Designers Playbook. That's what I call it usually for landing interviews. Before we start, before I tell about myself a little bit more, just like why for landing interviews, why not for landing a job? The current market, which we're also going to talk about in a second, is really not in a perfect state. And I've helped juniors find jobs or, go from 0 to 1 for a couple of years now. Basically, since I started this journey myself, when I got my first job, I started helping out people, like looking at their portfolios, resumes, and like giving them advice on like what they could change. And what I found during all this time is that once you take that, like make that step to not getting interviews at all to regularly getting interviews, you've got 80% of the journey done. Because once you're there, something resonates with the people on the other end, the companies or wherever you apply, could also be government, right, or whatever. And once you got that step, you're not in the clear yet, but you're definitely like a very, very big step ahead of a lot of people. So getting interviews in the first place is always the first step. Whenever I talk to someone, whenever I agree to support someone on their journey, I always take that as the first huge milestone. So we're going to talk about that today, and we're not going to talk about any interviews or anything that comes after that. Because that is kind of a separate topic. There are different rules on this playing ground, and we'll talk about getting there first. So before we dive into that, a little bit more about me. As already said, I'm based in Hanover, Germany, and I already saw in the chat that there are a couple of people from Germany as well. I did not expect that. So you guys might know where Hanover is. The rest, I don't expect you to. It's not the biggest city in the country. I'm currently a senior product designer at a company called Juro, which is a Series B funded venture in legal tech, startup or scale up, something in between. In the legal tech area, we do contract management, and I'm working on integrations and the document editor. So something very similar to, for example, Google Docs, if you want to imagine that, but a bit more specific for lawyers or general legal counsel. I'm also the founder of Open Doors. You might have heard about Open Doors if you're a junior. I think it's spread quite nicely across the community by now. It's a job board that's entirely focused on junior roles. Every junior role that I get my hands on gets posted there. There's a lot more coming as well, because it goes way beyond the job board by now. I also have a weekly newsletter that is focused on the exact topic we're talking about today. And some of the topics that I'm going to cover today, are covered there as well, but in a bit more depth, obviously, because I can always pick one topic and go a bit deeper. Also helping you out with, free resources that I come across or that I create myself, that can help you in your job search. And I also have portfolio showcase in that newsletter where I have a very good example of a junior portfolio every week that I show to you, and then I tell you what's good about it, and then I can also tell you like what could be even better, and that helps the people being showcased because they get some basically some showtime, and that helps also the rest of the audience because they can see what a good example of a portfolio looks like. But we're also going to look at that today. So let's dive in. We're going to talk about the market first. Like obviously we all know what it is, and I always get the question, like, does it get better this year? We'll talk about that. Then we'll dive in with approaches to the job search, which is kind of like laying the foundation for everything that I'm about to talk about after that. Then we find out what makes you unique as a designer in specific, not necessarily as like, a normal human being, but just like as a designer. And then we'll continue with the resume, the portfolio, and lastly, we'll also talk a little bit about networking. We can make the networking bit kind of a stretch goal, depending on how well we go along time-wise. But I think resume and portfolio, those are the ones that like the meaty bits that we need to cover for sure. And yeah, so let's go in there. State of the market, what to expect this year. Is it going to get better? Well, I give a soft yes. So you see the meme I prepared on the right there. This is kind of the state that you probably all found yourself, are currently finding yourself in. There's like so many applicants per role, especially for the junior roles, layoffs left and right. You're asked to do unpaid design tasks, which is not new, but definitely, even more drastic now. And you see junior roles that blatantly ask for 3 years of experience, which is complete nonsense. And you still see this is fine, I want to do this. That's good because that says you're determined, and that's needed. That's like kind of the foundation you need these days. Like if you're not determined, not persistent, probably not the best thing to try. But I think you all are. You're here today, you're here to learn more, you want to make it, and so I'm glad that you're here. So why is soft yes then? We've seen an increase in roles, actually. You will not believe this, and you'll say, you call me a liar even, probably. But the statistics really say that compared to 2022, we've seen a moderate increase in design roles in the EU and the US. So if we're talking about other markets, it might look a little bit different there. But not necessarily too different, I'd say. But the reality is that there's actually more roles out there overall, like not just junior, but like across the board, basically. But we also have more candidates now because there are a lot of layoffs, and the boot camps are still, recruiting people and like shooting out new designers on a daily basis. So it's not getting less, on the contrary. And therefore, we have a kind of ripple effect that's now in place, basically. So we have juniors that apply obviously also to junior roles, but as we all know, there are not too many out there. So most people resort to also, which is the right thing, by the way, and we'll get to that, but it's the very right thing to do. You also resort to apply for like mid-level roles that might not necessarily ask for more than like 2 or 3 years. Or even, don't even have a year requirement in a job description. And then you have those, mid kind of designers, mid-level designers. Those are obviously also on the job hunt, but they are usually not going back to junior roles. They are usually staying in that, or they're trying to make the jump from senior. But the big problem, and that's the biggest factor in all of this, is that we have tons of seniors going back into like more general product design or UX design roles that would be situated in the mid-level. Why? Because most of the people that were laid off are rather on the senior level. Like obviously there are people from all levels being laid off. Also management staff, I've also included that in that graph there. But most people that you see on the market right now are actually senior designers. And obviously, if they apply to those mid-level roles as well, they are tough competition, right? They have a lot of experience. They might even come from like prestigious companies in some cases, like farm companies or startups that were just generally doing really well, and maybe have like a really good design culture that they helped establish or something. And as a junior, what can you do really, right? And then obviously we'll also have some of the lead people that are like going back to senior, but that's definitely less. Lead people have been laid off as well, but they usually manage to like find some other way of staying in their bracket, or maybe even make a jump up. That also happens, by the way. Like the graph is not accounting for that. There are also senior people trying to like go to lead now, but the vast majority is doing this because they kind of have to. They are also desperate in a sense. And what we also see, and that's why I've included them in the first place, is manager roles, design managers, head of designs, and other more management-focused design roles. They are now seen as a luxury in the corporate, or generally in the design industry. So the companies that still have them are doing well and have probably not laid off anyone. And those that have laid off a lot have basically told their managers to either go back to an IC role, lead, principal, or whatever, or be fired, basically. So those people are also slightly going back to IC roles or trying to do something else. Yeah, and that's the situation we have. So you are here and the seniors are there and you have this bad overlap. And that's really the tough part here. So what happens now is this is not going to stay like this forever. Instead, what we're going to see is those senior people are going to like go back where they belong at some point, because there are big problems with this. The big problem here is that obviously they can go back to these mid-level roles and companies will take them because they are like bringing all the experience and can probably level their design work up and all of these nice things, but they also have to pay for that. And also those seniors all have a healthy interest in growing their career and growing their like trajectory. And that is not something you can do if you take a step back, at least not properly. So what we'll see is either these people being promoted, or these people switching companies again, or other scenarios where they just try to like move more into their bracket or even beyond that towards, the next level. That's a natural progression. And that is something that needs smoothing out over time. And this is what we're going to see this year. So we're going to see some kind of a plateau, that will feel like nothing is changing. Well, actually things are changing under the surface, but like in this model that I showed you here, but it will obviously, from a point of how many interviews do I get, it will still feel a little bit like nothing's changing. But yeah, I'm pretty convinced it is. By the way, that's not just my opinion. That is statistics, opinions of like a lot of other people in the industry that have a very close eye on this. Yeah, feel free to like chat to me about that, like after the like in the questions, or hit me up on LinkedIn, talk it through if that's something that interests you, and you want to get more detail. So how to compete, and that's what we're talking about today. So keep this in mind, by the way, like for the next exercise or the next part, you need to keep in mind that you are like competing with seniors to a certain extent here at times. And I apologize for the imagery, by the way. Like I had to get something done quickly for this, and I resorted to AI, and I know they are not perfect. I did not spend a lot of time on the imagery on the next slide. So let's play a game. Like if you shoot with a shotgun at close range, you're going to hit a lot, right? What happens with the sniper? You might hit something, but you only hit one target, right? That is the senior in this exercise. The senior can just shoot at multiple jobs, push out applications to multiple jobs and not even tailor them necessarily. Just put their credentials out there, like talk a little bit about the impact they had in their roles, and they are going to land interviews. Like maybe not all of them, but definitely some. The sniper would be, you know, them just like singling out a role in the mid-level and just like shooting very like clearly and like very deliberately at that, which is good. They'll probably get that interview, I'm pretty sure, but at best they hit one target. So obviously they do the scattergun, they do the shotgun approach, they'll just push stuff out there and they'll land the interviews. But does that work for you as well? Because you are much further away from the target. You're juniors, you lack experience, at least direct design experience. You often still don't know, like, you know, am I doing this right? Am I doing it wrong? And all these things. So you're further away from those mid-level roles that the seniors have already surpassed, and they already know these. So they are closer to it, much, much closer. And if you do this, the shotgun will lose because you're far away from it. You're shooting at it. If you're lucky, like one of the bullet hits, maybe. But with the sniper, you're pretty much, I won't say guaranteed, but like you have a very, very high chance, depending on your aim, to hit that target. So while the seniors can do this and just like fire out their applications and like throw it onto the desks of the hiring managers and recruiters, you need to really consider where you apply, how you apply to it, and basically do everything around it. So the approach is basically, yeah, a very different one, except you're going for the same target. It's just further away for you. And the seniors are shooting at it at close range. You're shooting from far away. What does that mean? That means that if you go for something, if you apply for a job, you need to really show how you are a really good fit, and it needs to be a good fit in the first place. So, for example, if you think that you're more of a strategic designer, and that's the next topic we're going to talk about. If you're a more strategic person, like you're really good with UX in general and all the bits that come, like, let's say in the first half of the process, and you just apply for a role that from the job description already says that it's very visual focused. You need like a lot of, you know, UI skills. You need to produce polished UI, maybe even have experience with design systems. If you apply for that job, that is not going to work out. Like even if you take a good shot with that sniper approach on that, you're quite unlikely to land an interview. So you need to take those jobs that really fit your profile and your strengths well, and then do the little bit of extra work. So instead of applying to 20 roles that you find that could be something, you take the 5 that really hit the mark and go the extra mile for those. And we're going to talk about what that means a little bit later. But for now, I know that if I talk about this, I very often get the question like, I'm a junior, so what actually is my strength? Like, do I have any? I've just learned this. I just learned all this stuff. And like, how do I know what I'm good at? How do I know what makes me unique? So let's find out what does. What's your sparkle, so to say? Like, what is it that you bring to the table that would make someone go, oh yeah, they'd be a valuable addition to the team? Keep in mind, this obviously, like for every role, they are looking for a slightly different person, always. Like no job description is the same, and no ideal designer for that job description is the same. But obviously, recruiters are never looking for, and hiring managers don't do that as well. They're never looking for someone who checks every single box, because that person, it might exist, but the chance of finding that they'll be out of business by that time that they find that person. So we'll take a look at how to make sure that you can identify roles where like you hit like 70 to 80% of the things on there, which is a really good rate. And then you apply to that and you make sure that that one counts. That's what we're going to find out about. So think about the following questions for this. And by the way, I don't really have an eye on the chat. I know that a lot of people just said that they wanted to like ask questions in between. I haven't really like tailored that presentation to that. So Kim, if you notice questions that would be good to like talk about during the presentation, like just let me know. All right, so think about who are you, first of all, as a designer? Like what parts of the process that you just learned about, that's fine. But what did you do very well in your opinion, or also in the opinion of your peers? Maybe you've done an internship and got feedback there. Maybe you have a mentor that can like tell you. And to be fair, if you have a mentor and that never came up, ask them and tell them to be blunt and honest because it's important. If you still lack those visual skills because you've never done any kind of visual job before, like I was that person, by the way. Like I'm not a super visual designer. Like I think by now my skills are like kind of on par with what they need to be for the kind of role that I'm filling. But in the beginning, I was not very good with UI. Like I had to learn a lot of those things, and that was like my toughest spot. But I was super strategic, very good at like working with data and like being analytical, thinking like out of the box and like making sure I see the big picture, all those things. So, and that's something that I had to find out, and that's what this is about. So also, which ones do you enjoy the most? It might be that you're really good at research, and you can do like really good, research summaries and really find out stuff in a very good way, but you don't want to do it because like you just like to do it all, for example. That's fine. That's also a realization, and we'll have to factor that in because it is not like it's not very useful if you manage to find a job in a niche you're super good at that you actually don't want to do because it's not fun. So make sure to also account for that. Is there any niche knowledge that you might already have that could be design systems, accessibility, or any other kind of like subtopic in the design world? Please don't be dead set on those. Like, don't put all your cards on accessibility. Like, it's an extremely important topic that need like I'd wish that like every designer would go through like some basic accessibility training in whatever training they do. But the reality is that in companies, like this is, for example, a topic that plays a role in certain points and it needs an advocate, but this is not going to get you the job. There's barely any role out there that's so focused on accessibility that you could just land based on those skills, land that role with that. So, but they can still be super beneficial. So recently I had someone that I mentor, so to speak, that did an internship, and during that internship, she was to lay like the foundations for a design system from scratch. Obviously, she had no idea what to do, but she read up, she gained skills, she talked to people who are experienced, and she came out of that internship with a skill that 99% of other juniors don't have. And obviously that makes her like unique and that makes her stand out for that specific topic. And that now helps her land interviews as well, because there are a lot of roles that ask for knowledge on this. And this is something she can basically be on par on with some seniors, because there are also seniors out there who maybe have worked with design systems, but not so much. So they're actually kind of equal on that field, which is great. And that's how you pull up. And then, sorry, a bit of a sore throat. So then also ask yourself, are you a specialist or are you T-shaped? That's a very big difference. Specialist could be, for example, a UX researcher. You only do research. You have a role that is not doing wireframes, well, usually, at least. And that's not doing any kind of UI or developer handoff or all these things. It's just doing research. And it's working like in a kind of embedded way. And that can go for other niches as well. I mean, to be fair, we are going away from like specialist roles, at least outside of research. Like UI designers are kind of disappearing now and are blending into product designers who do everything, but still with like focus. Or are you actually that person already, this kind of like product design T-shaped person where you have skills across the board, but then you have one vertical where you're really good. And that can be anything, to be honest, anything in the process. The big favor in the industry currently are either people who have that in a visual like vertical or in the strategic vertical. So everything what I said, like that's my profile basically. Like thinking big picture, making sure that you account for stuff that happens outside of a project and like talking to stakeholders, all that kind of stuff. If you're good with that, that's also T-shape. But then most importantly, and I know there are a couple people here who also transitioned from other careers into design, but not even, you don't necessarily have to have done that. You could have had a job while you're at university, like a student job, for example, where you learned some skill, whatever that might be. What is your background, and what of your background translates into design? And there is so much of that. And that's always something that people like have a hard time understanding at first. And I've seen people completely erasing every experience that they had prior to transitioning into design from their resume. And that is the exact wrong thing to do. I try to not say this is the right thing, this is the wrong thing, because usually you just have to find out what works for you. There might be some backgrounds that are really not giving away much. I'd say those are very few. But for those, it might be better to just not mention them, because on your resume, you should only see what really matters. But most backgrounds, so for example, you've been in marketing, you've been in customer success or customer service, you've been in law, you've been, I don't know, a teacher. In every single one of those, you'll find like you'll find such valuable skills that just wait to be highlighted, and that'll help you land a job in design. Sorry, I'm gonna take like a cough drop to make sure we'll prevent that. And then are there any soft skills generally that you have that are like applicable? I talked about stakeholder management already. This is like super important in design. You might not know about that right now, but again, talk to a mentor, like list out all the stuff that you did in the past and find out like what kind of soft skills do you have? Like if you excel in stakeholder management, that is going to be something that is so valued in product design roles, because yeah, I can't say a percentage, but like I do manage stakeholders every week at least, maybe not every day, thank God, but every week. And that means, how to talk to people that are not designers, that are not even in product, that are not engineers or anything else. That might be in marketing or customer success or sales or whatever. And you've done that. Another one would be cross-functional collaboration. You very often read that on design job descriptions. But you don't need to have work cross-functionally as a designer to showcase that skill. You can also have worked in marketing together with, I don't know, marketing designers, or maybe an engineering team that implemented some stuff, or with copywriters. That's also cross-functional work. Or in sales teams even. There are different kinds of like stages in sales process and different people that tend to that process at the specific time. If you are in a team like that, that's still cross-functional. Yes, it would be good if it's something that has to do with technology. Like if you work with engineers or project managers, or you've been the project manager and then you've worked with engineers, very valuable, super, super valuable. So yeah, think about these things. and make sure that you don't delete them from your resume. We're going to talk about that. So, and then what you do with this is you then craft an elevator pitch or summary, whatever you want to call it. I read all different terms every day. And that's mine. I'm Florian, a product designer blending product management expertise with a strategic and data-driven design approach. In here, and this, by the way, is not the one I use now. I use a very similar one now, but that was the one I had when I was like landing my first role around that time. When I started to craft this and applied it to my resume, to my portfolio, I started to get interviews because people saw, like, this says nothing about my design experience, not a single word. Like, design approach, okay, like, but I don't need experience to have a design approach, at least not a lot. But it says my background, or first of all, it says what I want to be or what I am. I always say what I am. Don't say like you're aspiring or something. You're already there. Like you can already call yourself that. Don't say you're an aspiring UX designer or whatever. It tells about my background. I have worked in product management for a year, and even though that was just a year and that role was, let's say, not very good, I still practiced these skills. I still learned a lot and like applied skills there. So it is worth mentioning. And then those are my, like, I think two biggest strengths. There are more, I'd say, like now knowing these things about myself and actually having worked in a role, I see a few things a lot more clear, like what I'm good at, what I'm not so good at. But this is the stuff back then that stood out to me and that also other people said about me and like recommendations or mentor feedback. And I took that and I put it in there because these things are relevant. Those things are important. And that is the time when I started to like go uphill for me. By the way, I've seen this with a lot of people that had like these introductions like this one, but instead said, I'm a passionate UX designer, wanting to like create human-centered solutions. But that is every single designer out there. That's not standing out at all. Like that's not saying anything about you in the first place. And that was the problem. I had to start saying something about myself. And that is just one sentence, well, two sentences if you count the introduction. And it's so packed with valuable information and it's making me really unique. Like, because the chance of finding a person that has that profile, like, I mean, it's not zero and it's not extremely low, but it's definitely not that you're just going to go on LinkedIn, pick a random person and find that profile. And that's good because that is how you're going to like stand out in a specific like niche of jobs. That niche will not be super small. It will be big enough for you to like always have something to apply to, unless you don't want to work remote and live in a town in the middle of nowhere. And then maybe you'll have a hard time with that, but that might be a different discussion. So that being said, like go back, think about like who you are, what you want to do, and what you're good at. So now let's talk about the resume, because now we apply this on a larger scale. What's the essence of you in a bit more detail? So the idea is to keep it simple in general. I've seen people list everything they did ever. I've seen people list barely anything that they did. Both is not right. You need to strike a balance and keep it simple at the same time. And by the way, I see we're like, with time, we're a little bit like advanced already in terms of time. So we might have to split that up or like postpone at least the networking. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. So what's important about your resume? And by the way, this is a real one from someone that I mentor, that I've supported. Just made it like anonymous because I did not have the chance to ask her. But it's a real one and it's performing well. And yeah, this was even before we made some changes. It was already performing quite well. what is important? So first of all, this person shows impact. She did like she's doing 2 volunteer jobs where she actually made an impact already. She worked there for a while now, as you can see, like a couple of months, and she worked on projects that had a measurable impact. This is obviously a bit tough if you just have like student projects. But this does not only go for your design work, it also goes for your professional experience. So if you have a background in marketing and you have helped to up a conversion rate, or I don't know, gain a specific increase in whatever metric, that needs to go on there, because that shows you can work impact oriented, which is something that every business wants designers to do. This is not talked about enough, to be honest, in my opinion, because yeah, it's always like, you need to advocate for the users, like you need to just care about user needs. You do, but not exclusively. The business hires you to achieve a goal, and that goal is measurable. In the very end, it usually translates into money, but we can keep it one level before that, and that is like some kind of metric that eventually drives that. So make sure you show results wherever you have them, even if they are even modest results are still better than none. So show impact. Showcase soft skills. You collaborated with people, for example. That's her thing here. She collaborated with UX writers and product strategists in that role. Cross-functional collaboration. That's one of the things I told her, make that cross-functional collaboration, not just collaborating, because it matters. Especially if you tailor your resume, it's very important that you try to use the language that they use in the job description. And in the beginning, this feels like it takes forever to do that. But for example, you can use ChatGPT. That always helps. Like if you give them the job description and your resume and say, make sure the terminology matches, it does a perfect job of that. So definitely try that. And yeah, she shows soft skills all over. Soft skills are sometimes put into the skills section. But the problem is that compared to hard skills, like Figma skills, for example, or being able to do information architecture, soft skills are like, I can say I'm empathetic and but like what I need proof for these things. So if you put them into the experience part, you can actually connect the soft skills to something that you did and show also ideally have a result tied to it. So that's how this is going to land with the person looking at this. Show transferable skills and experience. This person chose only the professional experience that actually gave something that was valuable for design. Conducted user interviews, research, analyze market trends, like work with data, right? Even though those are not design things in itself, those are all transferable things into design, and shows a couple of both soft skills and hard skills that are super valuable for her and that really help her. And that's something that, yeah, that a lot of people, dismiss. So make sure to not do that. Then, also tailor the skills to the job description. Only mention the important things that are in the job description in the same way that they phrase it or spell it. Maybe without spelling mistakes if there are any, but like generally the same terminology. And then if you still have some space on your resume, you can still put some of the standard skills they might have missed on that job description. But again, for that, like ChatGPT is super helpful in finding those out in the first place, accelerating your process by a lot. And then leave out anything that doesn't add value. So any professional job you had before design that really ends up not adding anything, not a single thing, okay, leave it out. Like if that creates a gap in your resume, you might want to mention it, but without the bullet points, just to make sure you account for the timeline. But don't mention anything that does not really add anything. The same goes for your design experience, your design projects. Don't mention stuff that was just responsibility that you checked because you had to do it, so I did it. Like created wireframes, like for example, I sometimes read that I created wireframes, prototypes, and other design assets. Okay, cool. Like that I expect that of a designer. But what did this lead to? Why did you do it? And what did it help with? Like that's the important part here. And even for student projects, you can say something about that. And then consider an elevator pitch. That is what she left out. That is the thing that I showed with my own example earlier. So something that gives a short summary of who you are, like your background and your skills, your strengths. Usually that's best put on top because that will be the first thing they'll read. And if that already resonates with them based on the role they're looking for, they are already like, you're going to like have a bit higher chance of like getting that interview for that role than not having that. If you have the space for it, I've also advised in very rare cases to not include it because like there was no background, and then the strengths were like really like everything was like on the same level for that person. In those cases, I advise, but that's like 2% or 5% out of the 100 that I look at every day. So that's the resume. If you do this, pretty sure, like if your portfolio is not completely doing everything else wrong, you're going to land an interview with that eventually. Not for every role, not in the first week, maybe. You might have to like do something, but I've seen resumes like this resonating heavily. So let's move to the portfolio. And I'm going to do that one. And after that, we're going to go to questions. So we'll make sure you still can ask those. So the work, and that is important. Portfolio is your work. It's not you. Well, it is you to a certain degree, but it's not you in the spotlight. It's your work in the spotlight. That's very important to know. So your portfolio is a product that needs to consider the users. The users are recruiters and hiring managers, nearly exclusively. Don't count those other designers that look at your portfolio as an example. They are there, but you don't need to account for them. They because they have the same goal of impressing those people. So they are your users. Both of them lack time. They spend maximum 5 minutes, and that's super generous. They spend a maximum of 5 minutes on it. The hiring manager might spend more as you progress through the interview stages, but in the initial view of like you as a candidate, maximum 5 minutes, more like 3 if you're like, yeah, if it's interesting enough in the first place for them. Recruiters usually don't have a clue about design. I recently talked to a recruiter that has worked at Meta for, I don't know, 5 years and was only there for design recruitment. And still his knowledge about like what actually is behind all those buzzwords that he's looking for, he doesn't know. He simply doesn't know. And he's not stupid. Sorry, like I don't want to call recruiters stupid. That's the last thing I want to do. But like, it's not their job. They just have to like check the boxes and find someone who's like also like culturally a good fit and all those things. But it's not their job to know. So they don't have a clue about design in the first place. Hiring managers pay attention to detail. So yeah, don't have typos in there, for example. That's something that will always come up eventually. You always, well, it won't cost you the job, but the more there is of these things, the worse it gets. And both don't read, they scan. Because of that time limit, they only scan. And that means, like, I've recently seen a post on LinkedIn of someone who's also doing a lot of content, and he does that from like a hiring manager perspective. And he said he has not read an entire case study in his life, and he's probably looked at like 1,000 portfolios. He's never read an entire case study like from start to the end. That is because they do scan. They look for things. They look for specific things. So keep it simple to ensure that your work is immediately accessible. The work is what they are looking for, those users. That's what they want to see. The navigation and the layout are simple. which means that there's not like a drop down with 1,000 options on the top, or I don't know, like 10 of your side projects next to your work stealing the spotlight, or whatever else. Like, keep it super simple. There's maybe a work tab, there's an about, and there's maybe a link to your resume, and that's about it. And yeah, if your work is on the homepage, you don't even need the work thing. You just need a home link. And that's it. And maybe link to your LinkedIn. Okay, but that doesn't even need to be in the navigation. That can just be on the page somewhere. So that's it, not more. If you really have like super special skills in graphic design or motion design, or something that's like will really help you land a role in product design, for example, you can have that in there, but make sure it never steals the spotlight, really, because it's beautiful that you can do illustrations, and it will come handy in your career at some point, I'm sure. But the product designer is never hired for his illustration skills. Never. That's never going to make the difference. There are sometimes like roles, these 1 in 1,000, but you don't want to go for those. So yeah, make sure that you do it right for the masters, really. You have to engage your audience, and your work is the focus all the time, and your profile shines through. We've talked about this, like this little text that I have that I showed earlier about myself. That should be in like in the hero section of your portfolio. So you make sure that yeah, it's always seen by everyone who comes to that portfolio as the first thing they see. All texts are properly scannable for both the eye and the machine, ideally as well. Not going to go into too much detail there, but like make sure you have clear headings. Maybe you have some highlighting with like bold text of the important parts. What are the important parts? Like the keywords that they are looking for that you already know from your resume, or you know, the parts of the process that you went through, all those things. And also lastly, it doesn't take too long to see and like go through your work. I've seen case studies that would fill like, I don't know, 20 printed pages. I just said, no hiring manager reads these things anyway, even if they are short, completely. So what do you imagine a recruiter that has to scroll through such a, or a hiring manager, both of them? Like, what do they do if they are halfway through and they see, oh my God, this is still going on? They close the tab. I mean, if your work up until that point is so impressive that they think they cannot afford that, okay, fair enough. But most of the time, we don't want to take these chances, and it's not the case, right? So keep it short, keep it succinct, only get in there what's important. So I'm going to run through these a little bit quicker now to make sure we still have some time for questions. I divided this into 2 pieces, the main page and the case study, because those are the only 2 things that really count. The about page can make a little difference as well, and I think it's always beneficial to have it, but it's not enough, like important enough for me to talk about it right now. The main page has a simple navigation, like I just said. It highlights the profile. The work is super quickly accessible. It has engaging visuals, actually showing the product, the things you worked on. Ideally, even a bit more zoomed in than Sophia did it here, because it's hard to see what it really is. But still, it's engaging. It's like polished. It looks good overall. That's important. And there's, oops, sorry, no fluff or unrelated stuff here. And the about me is absolutely not the focus. One thing I want to say about her, about Sophia, I made that presentation last week, during the week, and yesterday evening she contacted me because I supported her. I was her mentor to an extent, and I showcased her portfolio in my newsletter. She signed an offer yesterday with this portfolio. So if you want to look at that, yeah, make sure to do that. She also is a transitioner, and yeah, she just signed an offer, which I'm very, very happy about. Always love to see that. So yeah, quickly. So the case study. Give context by talking about role, the tools you use, the timeline, the skills maybe, doesn't even need to be that. And also talk about like the software you designed, like what is it for, who is it for, give some context so everyone understands. In her case, it's like quite a complex kind of software, so a proper introduction was needed. If you are doing like a simple, very simple mobile app that has a concept that everyone already knows, that might not be necessary, but like make sure you give the appropriate amount of context. Make it easy to scan. So make sure you use these nice headlines like she did to to talk about the important things that you don't want them to skip. And if there's something in the smaller text underneath that you still need them to like recognize, put it in bold or whatever else you want to do to highlight. You could also like highlight it with like text background color, for example, depending on like your style or whatever. And only use visuals to support. So here, sometimes this is a competitive analysis that she has there. Sometimes I see every single screen of that app that the people looked at, and then they did that for free apps. And I'm looking at the like whole screens of free apps that this is not even fully about, just to like show that they did it. But that's not important. This already shows that you did it because she summarized it and she did it really well. So make sure to only use those visuals as a support and not as the main thing. And then later on, make sure to tell a story throughout. Don't just say, okay, now I did user stories, and then I did user flow, and now I did wireframes, and then I tested those wireframes. No, tell a story. Make sure to explain how you got from the initial problem or task or goal to the final solution, and everything in between that is really important. And make sure to tell that, like, how certain steps informed others. For example, you might come back to like user research results way later because in the beginning they didn't seem too important, and then later on you discovered something and you came back to that. Every project has these moments. You just have to make sure to capture them properly in a case study. If you want to show more deliverables than just one for a certain step, make sure to hide them and to like make them accessible, but only on demand, like she did with that carousel there. If you want to see more of those screens, you can by clicking through, but it does not extend the size of your case study because most people will scroll through, and they should. So yeah, and then lastly, we already talked about this in the resume, show impact and results. She did this really well by really taking metrics here that she, by the way, this is a study project. So she actually found impact in a study project because she looked at the user testing and took a look at like how is the task completion rate, how long did it take them, and like what was the benchmark. She did that really well. Make sure to look at this. If you're ever like asking, how can I show impact for like fictional case study, this is a good example. And yeah, we're going to skip this part, sadly today, because it would take me too long. We can do another one on this. And now, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Wow, thank you for such an informative event, Florian. That was really great. So much going on there, but we do have a few questions in our chat. Ashley has asked, the people that you've worked with, which have had, of the people that you've worked with, which have had better odds at getting an interview? For example, product designer or UX UI designer or CX designer.
What was the last one? Sorry.
CX designer?
Oh, customer experience. Yes. Okay, thank you for that one. Yeah. I mean, it does not necessarily tie to the type of role you're going for. I would much rather say it ties to like how well you fit that role and like what you can like show that is relevant in that role. So you would like some people would have really good odds for a researcher role, but really bad odds for a product design role because the skill sets are different ones. And you need to find out what matches yours best. And if you want that, go for that. That being said, one thing that might be good to touch on there is We've seen a big shift towards product design roles, those like more generalist roles, like the T-shape that I explained in the beginning. And we are seeing specialist roles disappearing a little bit, and also these UX UI roles are often just product design roles with a different name. Technically, they are not the same. The product designer does do a bit more thinking around the product, while the UX UI designer still focuses on UX and UI and really nothing else by terminology. But in the actual world, we are just seeing, UX UI designers basically being product designers. So there's no clear answer to this question. I'd say like the most roles out there are product designers, and if I've seen most people going for those roles and also landing interviews, those are also the roles that there's most like the biggest competition for at the same time. But the other roles, it really depends. I've also seen researchers land a lot of interviews once they finally tailored their profile to match the skill sets that is needed there. But the UX researcher role is obviously a very specialized role and not for everyone. So just to say that there are good odds there won't help you if you don't have the desire and the skill set to like work in that field. So yeah. Another one, unless there's a follow-up question to that one.
Oh, there's another one. There's one by asked from Ankita, who says that if they are new or fresher, what could you write in an impact section since they haven't worked on many real projects and can't put impact that shows growth in terms of numbers?
Yes, so you can still put that. You can still put numbers. So the biggest problem I always encounter when being asked that question is you probably already have projects in your portfolio that you already ran and that you already see as completed, and therefore you're often either not willing or not able to pick it up again. In some cases that might be possible. So if it is, it can help. Why? What I always do, or what I always recommend when people start a new project is in the beginning, think about what does success look like for that project. You can still do that in like hindsight as well. What success have looked like in terms of like user testing? That is your best chance at like getting results for a fictional project in your portfolio. That's also what Sophia did here. This is a fictional project. This is not a real like software that she designed for. This is a complete like a study project. But what she did is she looked at the user testing and made sure to set benchmarks for like what success would look like, and made sure that the task completion rate is like high one, and that the users can run through this quickly. And what she did is, you can't see that in the screenshot here, but what she did is she did this in the beginning with a real software, like one of the ones that she had in her competitive analysis. And she took those as like a benchmark to see where issues are, and also what like the time for completion looks there. And then she designed her solution and tested that in a similar scenario against that, and found that hers has a higher completion rate, a shorter amount to complete, like shorter time to complete. And that is success, and that's a metric. And that's just user testing with a fictional product. No need for analytics, or no need to actually have that as a real product. You can utilize user testing. This will vary depending on the kind of product that you have, that you designed for, what you can do there. But usually, in a normal study project, you will always have some kind of real product that you can look at. Like if you have a music player app, you can just like give people Spotify and do a user test with it. And then you solve the problem you identified with your own solution, and you do a very similar test with your own and see if it's better or not. If it's not better, by the way, and you don't want to rerun the whole thing, you can still show that and take that as a learning and like identify why it wasn't successful. This will still be an excellent case study that will get you hired, even if you failed, so to speak. It's more about working with data and learning from data to showcase these two things. That's what I want to see as a hiring manager. I don't want to see that your project was actually successful, because that's hard to tell with a study project anyway, right? Like in general, like it's still hypothetical, even though you did the testing. But it's much better than having no results or impact. Yeah.
Thank you for your answer. I'm going to mix a few questions together. There are a few people that are asking, what is the minimum number of case studies or projects that you want to include in your portfolio? And does it matter to focus on the aesthetics or making your resume look pretty?
Okay, let's tackle the amount of case studies. I always say 3 to 4. I've seen one portfolio recently that just had one case study in there. That's not going to cut it, like in any case, because you won't be able to show the like range of skills that you have, the range of like the range of surfaces you can apply your skills to, namely like mobile app versus web, and then also like what kinds of products and stuff. If you just have one case study, you are focusing on one thing only. And even if that's like a product that has a mobile app and a website, web app, that's still not 100% like showing everything there can be. And then I've also had someone who had two, but two very good ones, and two very like very different ones. And I was inclined to say, okay, that could be enough in your case. But still, she had feedback from companies saying, we would have loved to see a bit more range here in your portfolio. And it was quite clear she would have to do like a third one that would add to the ones that were already there. So that being said, also don't overdo it. I say 3 to 4 because that is a sweet spot for being able to show like, yeah, that range of skills and that range of like products you can work with. But if you just put 6 case studies there and they are, for example, not polished very well or super short and missing a lot of things, that's also not going to help you. So the number is important, but like it's not everything. I think you can very well land a good job with 3 or 4 if they like match the criteria properly, and also embody like your strengths and like where you want to go. If you're applying for jobs in like consumer facing apps, so let's say you apply at, I don't know, DoorDash, for example, to work on their customer facing app, and all your case studies are about B2B apps to do your taxes or something like that. That's not a portfolio that can land such a role. You will have to like think about that a little bit, at least, even as a junior. As a senior, that becomes much more important. But as a junior, it's already a little bit important. So make sure to think about that as well. And then the aesthetics on the resume. So this is a bit one where I'm like, this is one where I'm a bit conflicted, because I've heard from recruiters that like, you're a designer, I expect something that's like visually striking. And then at the same time, I've heard people say, both recruiters and also hiring managers, there's just no need for this on a resume. Like if your resume shows your skills, your experience, and the impact you had in a proper way, I don't really care what it looks like. And in my experience, if we look back at the resume that I showed earlier, this is not very striking, right? Like this is pretty boring, actually. Not even color in there or anything. But she lands interviews with this. So I'd say it depends a bit. Don't overdo it. If you have some personal branding with like a logo or something, you can put that. You can also use highlight colors for like, I don't know, like the dividers, for example. I'd say that's totally fine. But like making sure you have like a fancy gradient in the background and animation playing when the thing opens, that's probably too much. And like also these things are hard to execute well. So I'd stay away from that and try to like take something that you are fine with generally and that kind of like fits you in your own feelings, like your own yeah, I don't know, like it feels good to you, and it checks all the other marks. If that's the case, like if you show impact and everything, you'll be fine. Next one, if there is any.
Thank you. We do have quite a few more questions left, but we have reached much way over our end time. So I think that for the people that have dropped their questions in the chat, we really do appreciate them. And I do encourage you to reach out to Florian on LinkedIn or any of the ways that are best to connect with them.
Yeah, exactly. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always super happy to answer questions. Like I usually always get back to you on like specific questions, especially around the things we talked about today, but also stuff that we haven't talked about, like networking. If you have specific questions or want strategies, very happy to do that. I can't always look at every single portfolio and resume. I have like services for that. If you really want me to do that, because it just like takes up a lot of time and me working full time and running open doors next to it, it's like it's a bit of a tough one. So I'm very sorry if I have to say no to that. But every like question that you have that is not directly about your resume or portfolio, your specific one, I'm super happy to answer, and I'll make sure. And also make sure to subscribe to my newsletter. I'll drop that link as well, because a lot of the things that we talked about here today are actually covered there, in very often quite a bit of detail. So yeah, it was a pleasure to be here. Maybe there'll be a second part to this. I don't know. We can talk about that. I'd be down. And yeah, I hope to hear from you.
Yeah, we would love to have a second part. I think that would really be of value. Thank you so much, Florian. Love the presentation. Thank you everyone for joining and for all your questions. Yeah, do reach out to Florian on LinkedIn. It's dropped in the chat. And the recording for this will be uploaded on YouTube if you want to refer back to a specific section. And yeah, have a nice day. See you at the next workshop.
See you,
Thank you.
everyone. Have a good day or night, wherever you are.
Bye bye,
Cheers.
everyone.
All right.
Thank you. Happy weekend, everyone.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for dropping in on a Saturday. Have a great rest of your weekend. Bye bye.
Hey everyone, on behalf of IterateUX, we'd like to thank you so much for watching this week's event. If you like the content, please leave a like and subscribe. We'll have events every Thursday at 5:30 Pacific Time. Join our Discord in the description to find out more.